So useReducer is meant to handle complex states. So let's say you have states that work together. If you observe that states work together, then you can start thinking about useReducer. Or this state is complex, you can start thinking about useReducer. Then I give an example. Let's say you have a function that looks like this, and you observe that, let's say inside this I have name, set name, let's say department, then let's say H. So let's assume you observe that whenever you want to change one of these, you end up changing the remaining two. So maybe you notice that they work together. All of them always work together. For instance, if I say set name, if I need to change them, you observe that I also need to change the remaining two. I need to call set age and set department, right? Then set age. So you notice that whenever you change one, you have to change the remaining two, like this. In that case, you start thinking about using useReducer. So useReducer is meant to handle complex states or related states. Those are instances where you make use of useReducer. So let's see how we can make use of useReducer. useReducer looks like Redux. We've looked at Redux, right? A good understanding of Redux will make it easy to understand useReducer. So to use useReducer, let's say var. Let's do something simple at first. You know, for your state, whatever you put here, useReducer. Whatever you put here, any value here, let's say 30. This 30 becomes the value of var if this were to be use state. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. So for use state, this 30 becomes the value of var. Alright. But the way useReducer works is that the first parameter of this useReducer is expected to be a function. I come again. The first parameter, whatever you put here, is expected to be a function. And the second you put here now, let's say whatever value, let me put my name. Sorry, someone wants to join the class. Let me quickly add this person. And whatever value you put here as the second one becomes the value of your var. Do you understand? I come again. The first argument is going to be a function. We are going to discuss the function better. But this second one becomes the value of var. So that means that this second argument is doing the work of this in use states. Any questions so far? It's doing the work of what this is doing, right? But the first one is supposed to be a function. So let's discuss this first function. So like you already know. Is that?
The class is being recorded.
Yes.
It's bad here. I can't even see your screen. Just freeze. I'm just hearing your voice.
Okay, the class is being recorded. It's being recorded.
That's all.
Alright.
See everybody claiming that I have poorness or something.
Alright, the class is being recorded. Okay.
Right done.
Alright. So back to what I was saying. This second argument becomes the value of whatever you put here, the value of your states. Right. Now, just like this part, whenever you want to change the value of your states, you make use of this, right? In this case, you make use of this, but we are going to talk more on this later. But for now, understand it. useReducer has two arguments. The first one is a function. The second one is the value of whatever you want your initial state to be. Let's move forward. So let's create a function. Const. Let's just use my func for now. Oh, we've already used my func here. Let's say my reducer func. So this function is what you put here now, my reducer func. My reducer func. So the essence of this my reducer func is that whenever you want to change anything in your store, my reducer func, or whatever name you give to this function, will be the one responsible for that. And it takes two arguments. The first one is your state, just like Redux, right? And the second one is action. The first one is state, and the second one is action. So we can now use, you can easily make use of switch case to handle this, or you use a if else anyone. If now that we explain all of this thing better, action, or for now, let's just look at okay. Whenever I call on this, I want to say states equals to can. Let's do something like this. So we are still going to add some other things, but let's start from something so simple and to understand how this works. I'll remove all of this also. This is what happens. Whenever I trigger this function, right, the value of my state becomes Kenny. Whenever I trigger this function, the value of your state becomes Kenny. The only use is that at this moment, we are saying the initial value to be Taye, but when you call on this, state becomes Kenny. What I will do now is that let's display var. Okay. We have Taye here at the moment. Next is how then do we trigger this function so that the value of our state can change from Taye to Kenny. Let's go over it again. When you use useReducer, it expects a function and your initial state, right? Whatever you put here becomes this. So when you display var, it's going to display whatever you put here. Then the next is that what if I want to change the value of my state? And I said, just like your use state, this is meant to do that for you. When you trigger this, it's going to find a way to call on this function. That's what it does. When you trigger this, it will find a way to call on this function. Then instantly, it will do whatever you have here, and it will set your state to be Kenny. And letting your state becomes Kenny, instantly your HTML page, like this part of it, will pick it up, and it's going to update itself. Any questions so far? So the next is how then do we run this? Right. So let's add a button so that when you click on this button, click me, then you can say unclick. Let's say my func. So let's get a function called my func. Sorry, someone wants to join the class. You are welcome.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yes. So this is it. When you click on this button, if you call on this function my func, then we can now use the opportunity to call on this set var. So when you call on this set var, like I said, we still come back to talk more on this. But for now, let's look at it in a very simple manner. The idea is that you have your useReducer. It expects a function, this function. Then you have your initial state, which becomes the initial value of your var. And whenever you, for now, just know that whenever you call on this function, it will run the code inside this place. And now we are attaching that to this, right? When you click on this button, it will call on this, and this will trigger this function setVar, and for that reason, it will run this code. Any questions so far? So let's click. Where's it? Has removed it. Okay. State equals Kenny. I'm coming. It's not changing it to Kenny, so let's fix that together. Undefined. State equals Kenny. It will dispatch this action on this. Okay, maybe let's do it then. Let's write it in for if action dot type equals to change name, then change the value of your state. So Kenny else. Oh, my bad. I think return Kenny. Yeah. Good. Sorry. So let's explain it again. Let's go over it again. Okay, this is it. Your useReducer, you have a function. This function is this, right? Your initial state is this var. Then this, just like your use state, look at it from that angle. That's just like your use state. You have this setVar. So when you display var, it will display whatever the value, whatever your initial state is, it will display it. When you click on this button, it will call on this function. This function will call on setVar, and it will trigger this and do whatever you have here. Whatever you return here becomes the new value of your state, right? It becomes the new value of your state, and whatever your state is var. I come again. Whenever you call on this function, you are returning Ken. Whatever you return becomes the new value of your state, and that's why when you click on this button, it will do this and return Ken, and instantly your page updates it. Any questions so far? If you are lost, say I'm lost.
Can you add that
Yes, yes. We still do it. We still go to the advanced parts. I just want us to start from something so simple that we can easily understand, relate to it before we now do complex stuffs together. Do you understand? Yeah. So let's proceed. Remember I said when you click on this, it's going to run all of this here. Right. Now, we can now say, let's assume, let's say, I want my states to be an object. I want it to have a name. I want it to have a department. Let's say, CSC, computer science. Let's do with this. Let's deal with this too. You will agree with me that the initial value of my var would be an object, right? So I can now display my name is var dot name studying var dot department. So it's going to be my name is Taye studying CSC. So this first function is meant to, I want this first button, sorry, this button to change the name, and I want to get another button to change the department. So I can say change name, then just copy, paste, change department. So when you click on this button, you want to call on a function to change this name. Let's change this to function change name. Then let's get another one to change the department. Now there is a little issue. The issue is this. At the moment, when you click on this one, oh, I have to add change name here. Change name. Change department. So at the moment, when you click on this, it will run this and it will call on this sesvar. And remember I said when you call on sesvar, instantly it will run this code and it will return Kenny. The problem of returning Kenny is that instantly the value of var will no longer be an object. Instantly it becomes Kenny. Do you understand? Hello everybody.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Whatever you return becomes the new value of your var of your states. So since I'm returning Kenny, which is a string, instantly my var will no longer be an object, it becomes a string. So I don't want that to happen. I want my var to still remain an object. So I can say, when I click on it, return back my state. You know, this is an object now. Spread back the whole state back, then set the name to Kenny. That's what I want. Let's first do this. We are coming back to this change department. Let's work with this. So when you click on this button, it will run this code. It will return back your old state. Remember, this is our initial value of, this is our initial state, right? It will return everything back, and but it will change the value of name to Kenny. Let's run that, and we see that work fine. But let's come to this department. When you click on this second one, like this, it's going to run all of this again, and if you call on setVar, the problem with this is that it will still run all of these codes. Do you understand? And meaning that it will do the same thing. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So let's refresh and do it. Click on the second one now. So you can see it's changed it again. That's not what I want. I want it to change the CSC, let's say to BCH, to maybe biochemistry. When I click on the second one, this first one, I want it to change the name. Fine, that is working fine. But this second one, I want it to change the department. So how then do we go about it? And we have just this single function to handle both. That is where the if statement now comes in. You can also make use of switch case. But I think we are more familiar with if statement. I mean, I think in our previous classes, I observed that a good number of us are more familiar with if statement. That's why we want to make use of if statement. But switch case, or we should we use? Should we use switch case? Should we use if statement?
Switch.
Okay. Switch case. Switch. So you can say action dot type. I will explain all of this. It is equal to change department, or well, oftentimes we usually write it in uppercase, which is not compulsory anyway. Change name. It is equal to, oh sorry, I'm doing it like this. If action dot type case change name, then in this case we want to return an object. Spread back your state. Sorry. Then case then case the second one, change departments. Done. for that one we return, just copy this, return back your states, and instead of name now, this becomes department, and the value of that we can change that to BCH. Default, our initial value, default value, always return back state. So let's explain what happens here now. Oh, we don't need this again. So the way this works is this. When you click on this, I'm coming. When you click on this button, remember it's going to run this, right? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
But now you won't just trigger that function. Now you are going to add an object. That object is supposed to have a property called type, and the type will be change name. Change name. So when you click on this now, this type will become this action.type. Whatever object you put here, or whatever value, whatever you put here becomes the value of your action. Since it is an object, this object becomes the value of our action. So it will check if the action.type, if it's equal to change name, it will do this. But if it is change department, then it will do the second one. So let's do that here. Put an object there, type, change department. So in this case, because it's a change department, it will do the second one. This is conditional statements, which case is another way of running conditional statements. If it is change name, it will do this first one. If it is change department, it will do the second one. And if it is this is the default value, it will always return whatever the value of your state is at that moment. Any questions so far? You said? These states, why do we keep creating states? No, we are not creating states, we are spreading it back so that we want it to return an object. You know, whatever you return becomes the new value of your state. What you are doing here is that spread whatever the value of state is at that moment, then add a new key, name, let it be Kenny. What you are just doing is that let this name override the one that might be here initially. Here is why it's necessary. Remember, your state starts as this, right? Remember I said whatever you put here is the initial value of your state, right? Are you with me? Whatever you put here, that is the initial value of your state. So at that moment, at the initial part, state is the same as this. The way it is here, your state is exactly this object. Now, when you now click on this button, you are calling on this function. This is calling on setVal. Then this is dispatching an object. So remember I said whatever you put inside this setVal becomes the value of your action. So it has a type on it, which is change name. That is why we say action.type, if it's equal to change name, then return another object. Spread whatever might be inside your states, that is, whatever you see inside states, return it back. Because if you just do it like this, the problem is that our new state becomes this object. Do you get it? Whatever you return becomes the new value of your states. So that means our state will just become an object that has name, that only has name. It will no longer have department. We will lose that. We won't be able to use department again. We will lose the department. But we don't want to lose the department. So that's why we say we have it like this. Spread whatever might be inside the state back. Everything you see inside state, bring it back here. Then override this name to Kenny. If you watch the very first class when we talked about spread operator, we've discussed this part. If you already have a property inside an object and you reset it again, for instance, let's say my object looks like this. Name is Peter, and I come here again and I say name is Taye. If I check it, it's going to use the last one. if I check the value of name, it's not going to be Peter, it will be this one, the last one. That's the same thing we are doing here. Even if name is inside the state initially, we are overriding it so that the value of name can become Kenny, while every other property still remains their value. They will retain their value except this name. And that's also the same thing we are doing here. Whenever we call on this here, it's going to do this, run this, then this condition will be true, this part. It will return whatever might be inside state, return everything back, but this department will override whatever might be inside state. Do you understand? Okay. Let's proceed. Why is this saying an error? Expected a function call and so on, especially line 10. What's on line 10? Coming this ends here. Oh, sorry, my bad. Return states. Okay. So let's refresh now. Click this changes to Kenny. Click this changes to BCH. Let's proceed. Let's take it a step forward. Now we want this to be dynamic, right? We don't want it to always be Kenny. Instead, we want it to be maybe to be a value my user sets. So let's do that together. We have an input. So I'll just make use of states. Let's make use of use states to handle that one. Let's IMP set IMP use states so as a type inside this place on change or on input anyone as a type here what do we call it, set input to event.target that value like this. So as a type here, the value of input becomes whatever might be inside this input. Then instead of sending change name alone, you can send something we call payload. Can you remember this from Redux? Hello? You are sending something called payload, and the value of your payload, okay, the value of your payload is whatever is inside this input. So let's see how we can retrieve it here. So just like we did in Redux, you come here, instead of saying name to be Kenny, remember I said whatever you put here like this becomes the value of your action, right? Meaning that my action now has two things in it. It has type and it has payload. So instead of saying instead of saying name should be Kenny, I can now say let my name to be this action dot payload. Remember again, whatever I put here becomes my action. So in this case, this action now, it now has a property inside it called payload. So I can say let the name be action dot payload. So let's see. Sorry, someone wants to join the class. So let's do this. Let's say Ajayi, and I click on this. Good. This has changed to Ajayi. We can use the same input to handle the department also, so that we won't have to create another input for that. So just set your input back to an empty string, right? Set IMP back to an empty string. Then value is IMP. Then payload IMP set IMP again. So let's discuss it together. Okay. So here is how it works. User will come here, type whatever. Let's say I want to change the name. I will type name here. So IMP becomes whatever is inside this place. Click on this first button. This will trigger this. This will trigger this part. Set val. It will dispatch this object. Remember, this object becomes your action. It will check if action.type is change name. Yes, action.type is change name. So it's going to run this part. It will return back the whole state, and it will set the name to be action.payload. What is action.payload? Action.payload is this IMP. So to set it to it, then the value of your IMP goes back to an empty string. Let's run that on the browser. Refresh. Let's say Joseph. Click. That goes back to an. So you see my input is empty, right? So when you are done, if you type another thing inside this input and you click on this second button now, it's going to run this function. It will dispatch this. The type will be change department. The payload will be IMP, that is whatever is inside that input at that moment. It will instantly, it will do this second part. It will return whatever might be inside state, but it will change the value of the department to be the action.payload. That means whatever it sees inside that input. When it is done, set IMP, your input goes back to an empty string again, so that it can delete everything in the input. So let's do that. Let's say department is anatomy. Click on this, and that's why we have this. Any questions so far? Okay, I think someone wants to ask a question. I think someone is up. I had a son now. Okay, in absence of question, I thought someone is up, his or her hand. Okay, in absence of question, let's look at one more. We are building it up gradually. So now we delete all of this and we can use it to undo a form. Delete all of this. Oh, there's something I also need to talk about before we go. You see, we don't usually you don't call this set var, we call it dispatch. Well, you can use any name. You see, when we use set var, it worked fine, right? But we use dispatch. So instead of using set var, you dispatch an action. You dispatch. So it will still work fine, just like before. Let's say okay, good. So everything is working fine, just like before. So now we can now delete all of these things. Let's look at it deeper. So we want to see how we can make use of use useReducer to undo a form easily, undo a form. Let's say my form, I'm taking name, email, password, and I want a single state to undo that for me. How can we go about it? That's the last thing we are checking out tonight. So in this case, we can create your value. So I can call this form values. Let's call this form values. Then dispatch. You can call it dispatch form or something. So this becomes useReducer. What's the first argument of useReducer? A function. Good, thank you. So let's create the function out here. Const form reducer. we have action. It will also have state and action. State comes before action. So you can now put it from reducer. So the second argument is what?
The state.
The initial value of your state. So I want my state to be an object. So I can say name, let it be an empty string. Let department be an empty string. Okay, let's do something. Instead of setting here, we can create it out here. Let's initial state be this object name, let it be an empty string. Department, let it be an empty string. Email, let's say email, let it also be an empty string like this. So instead of putting this here now, we can put our initial state. It's still the same thing, right? Yes, are you with me? Any questions so far? Hello? Any question? Okay, let's proceed. Next is this. We come to this place, then we can have our form tag. Then inside our form tag, we can have inputs. Want to handle the name, want to handle the department. Let's use a self-closing tag instead. Inside this place now, you can say the value of this. I want the value of this to be this form values, whatever is a dot name. So on input, so that as you type inside this, I want to call on a function. We can call it maybe set imp. So let's get a function called set imp. If you are lost at any point, please always call me back. Don't hesitate to call me back. So this for the first one, we just copy this. Let's give it a placeholder. Let's give this a placeholder. Placeholder name. Placeholder. The second one is what? I think one is email, the other is department, right? Okay, placeholder email. Last one, placeholder department like this. So remember, your input has an event on it. Event.target.value gives you whatever you have inside that input. So we can now say as you type inside this place, I want the value of my form to become whatever is inside that input, that particular one. So we can now come here and say dispatch. What do I want to dispatch? Let's go to our form reducer and create different actions to undo that part for us. So in our form reducer, we can say switch case action.type. Set input. So whenever I dispatch this, what do I want to do? I want to return this. Return. My form, the initial state is an object, so I still want to return that same object back. Spread everything back. Then I now want the value to be what we want to do is this. If I'm typing inside this place, I want the name attribute or the name property to be whatever is inside this input. If I'm typing inside this place, I want the email attribute to be whatever is inside this input. And if I'm typing on this, I want the department attribute to be whatever is inside that input. So what you're going to do is that whenever we are dispatching it, we are going to dispatch both the text inside it and this name attribute. Where is it? This name attribute. Oh, each of them does not have a name. Let's add a name attribute to it. It will make it easy. Instead of creating 3 different inputs to do that, we can easily use the name attribute to handle that. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Yes.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, sorry for coming late. And I want to ask, what does dispatch do?
Dispatch is an action. What happens is that when you dispatch like this, you put an action here, usually an object. Whatever you put here becomes the value of this action. If I put a text here like this, anything, that becomes the value of my action. It becomes the value of this else. It becomes the value of this action. Whatever you put there becomes the value of your action. So oftentimes you usually put an object, and the object will have a type called, in this case now, you can, in this case, you can say set input. So that when you dispatch this now, remember I said whatever you have there becomes the value of your action. So that means my action becomes this object, and it has a property inside it called type. So it will now compare it with this. Oh, it means this one. So it's going to run the code here. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So we are dispatching this. So I think I was correcting this. Okay. So we're going to add a name attribute to each of them. Name. I want this to be name. Name. I want this to be email. Name. I want this to be department, like this. So let's proceed. So each of the input has a name attribute. So whenever we are dispatching it, we are not just going to dispatch just the value inside that input, but also we dispatch this name attribute. So let's dispatch the 2 of them. We dispatch both the name and the value, not just one. Not just one. So where is it? Okay. We are dispatching. Let's call it ATTL, or let's call it key. I think key is better. Key is event. Remember, if I say event.target.value, that becomes the value inside this, right? Are you with me? What I'm saying is event.target.value, that becomes the value inside. If I say event.target.name, that becomes the value of this name. What I'm saying is this. Let's check it in the console so that you understand what you are saying better. Console log e.target.value and e.target.name. Let's log this to the console. So if I type inside this place, the values, whatever is inside there, why the name will be the name attribute of that one, you can see. The name attribute of this is that if I come here and I do the same for here, do you understand? If I come here and I do the same for that, any questions so far? Can we proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's move on. So e.target.value and e.target.name. So we are going to send the 2 of them. We will send the key to be e.target.name, and I will send the value to be e.target dot value. Maybe writing e dot target every time looks a bit long, so maybe you can destructure that out. Let's name name and the value. Let's destructure it from e dot target target, so that instead of saying e dot target every time, we can just say name. Then this will be value like this. So I think this is neater. So it's going to dispatch. Remember, I said whatever you have, this object becomes the value of your action, right? So this becomes the value of our action. We can now say, we talked about dynamic properties in one of our, maybe in the last class. Who can tell us how to set dynamic properties? Hello, are we there? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Who
sir.
can tell us how to set dynamic properties? I explained to us that you make use of square bracket notation. Action dot, what did we call this? I think key, called it key, right? Now it will make sense more now. And value is action dot, I think value, I think we call this value here. Where is it? Okay, we call this value, fine. So since the key and the value are the same thing, you can just do it like this. Yeah, good. So what have we done so far? Here is it. Whenever you type inside this first one, it will call on this. Your e refers to this particular one. e.target.name refers to this name attribute, which is name. And e.target.value refers to whatever you have inside this input at that point. Do we still get it to that point? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. So it's going to dispatch an object. That object will have a property inside it called key. And the key, the value of that key will be this name. So in that case, it will be this name. And it will have a property on it called value. And the value of it will be whatever the user type inside this particular input at that point. So all these three now, this whole object becomes the value of your action. So if you check, the action.type is set input, yes, action.type is set input. So it's going to return this. What will it return? It will spread back the whole state. It will now say action.key. What is action.key? Action.key is this name, right? Which is this name here, right? Are we together?
Yes, sir.
So action.key will become that name, will be name, and the value will now be this. So what you are just doing is this. It's just like doing something like this. Dot state set name to be whatever is inside that input. Whatever is inside that input. We are setting the name attribute to be whatever is inside that input. You might ask that why not just put name alone here? The reason is this. Let's look at the next one. It will make more sense now. Let's look at the second one. If I type inside this input, right, it's going to call on this. The name will be, what will be the value of the name? Email. Are you with me?
Yes.
What will be the value of, the value will be whatever the user types inside that input. And for that reason now, it will dispatch this. The key now, keep in mind, the key will be email. And the value is whatever. Let's say the user type taye@gmail.com. The value will now be taye@gmail.com. So it's going to run this same switch case, this part, because it's the same type, set input. It will return whatever might be inside there. Then what is action.key? Action.key now is now email. Do you understand? Remember, the key is this name, which is this email. So this is like saying, it's like doing something like this. States email, and it's whatever you have inside that particular, the value will have whatever is have inside that particular one. So it will override this one. And it's the same for the last one, which is department. Do we get it?
Yes, sir.
So we don't want to use this single case to handle the three input, and that is going to work perfectly. It's going to work fine for that. We are not yet done. Let's go to the browser and see if this is working. So I can type this now. You can see it's displaying. Maybe I want to display it somewhere here. My name is form values dot name with you can reach me. Let's say you can reach me on form values dot email at form values dot department. So let's go. Let's say tayo@gmail.com at let's say CSC. You can see how it's working fine. Everything is working fine now. But we are not yet done. Let's add a button. When you click on that button, you submit the form and you want to clear all your inputs and you set the value back to empty string so that you can start a new one. So let's add a button to submit. On submit, input type submit. Oops. I thought it would use input type submit. Okay. Input type submit. So on submit of this form now, on submit, call on a function. Let's say submit form. Let's get a function called submit form. So it's going to run all the code inside this function when you submit this form. First is you want to prevent defaults. What happens is this: the default when you submit a form, it will load the page. That's what I'm saying. Now let's just say console log hi. Look at this part. Just notice this part. This is where I want you to look at. When I submit it, do you notice that this loaded again, right? Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So it will reload it. It's like it's reloading the whole page, which is something you don't want. Or in this case, I don't want it. So I can prevent the defaults. Events e.prevent defaults, so that it's not going to reload the page. Prevent so let's do it again. Click. You see it's not reloading the page again. Let's move on. Next is that I want to reset everything inside this form back to empty string. So we can come here and do another one. We can say case reset form return. So what do we want to do here? We want to say let your name be back to empty string. So instead of writing all of this, department to be empty string, email to be empty string, we can just say use this initial state. Return initial state. Do you understand? Since this already has that empty string, so instead of rewriting it, we can just say return initial state. Now for our default value, return state. So I think next is how then do we call on this? You just come here and say dispatch. So at this point, if you want to send it to the back end, you can send it to the back end and do whatever you want to do with your form. Axios.post, you post to the back end and do that. So after you've posted to the back end and everything is successful, you can now say dispatch reset form type to be reset form. I don't need to set any other thing. So instantly, once it dispatches this, it will run the code. Yeah, it will return this same object back. And once it returns this object, everything goes back to empty string. Good. Let's now do this thing together. Name, title, email, nifa@gmail.com. Department, let's say physiology. So when you click, okay, everything is back to empty string. Oh, is it still loading this? Oh, I've removed the prevent default. Sorry. Seems I've removed. Oh, sorry. E dot prevent default. So let's go again. Name to be title, email, maybe this. Then pass department physiology. Good. It has sent the form and everything is back to empty string. Any questions so far? Hello?
No questions, sir.
So this is useReducer. How you can make use of it to handle your complex states in Reactjs. So watch the video if you have any question. Let me know in the next class. Our class continues next week. Thanks for coming. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Yes.